YB stays on your neck.
It's on my neck.
Every challenge we take has always been the best of the division.
You brought up stats there before. I know stats. I
Yeah,
crunched the CompuBox number. I can't believe I met them, man. But what we do is, we put together the punch stats, and I found something pretty interesting on you. I don't know if you even know this. Now, you're the pre-Klitschko, 16 fights. I looked at your punch distribution. 57% of your thrown punches were power shots.
Were they?
So now you flip around the 4 fights after Klitschko. 57% of your punches were jabs. So that leads me to believe, when I crunch these numbers, is that AJ's now more of a boxer than he was a brawler. You also have to take into account the competition. Now, leading into your last fight, you were talking about, man, sometimes I just want to get in that ring and I want to go in there and destroy, but my team wants to, rein me back a little bit. I want to stick behind that jab. But long story short is, do you think you'll come out like 57% power punches, or you think you're going to use a little bit more of a jab in this rematch?
It's interesting that you say that, because
Yo, my dance, make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and obviously hit the bell for notifications. So we just heard there from the CompuBox Statman some very interesting allegations and stats out of his mouth. Now, just to let you man know, I will be doing a 2-part video on this. This was obviously the first part where we hear the CompuBox man tell AJ the bottom line with his fighting stats. But also, in the second part, we're going to cover AJ's actual response to it. But for now, it's too much. In one video, I'll be speaking for 40 minutes. So let me just do 15 minutes on each, or whatever it ends up being. Anyway, so it's very interesting. These stats have been crunched. I do like to crunch stats myself. However, I haven't actually done more than what's been in front of me, in as much as I've seen AJ's average punch output career-wise is around 40 punches, and historically the heavyweight average is also around 40 punches. So his bang on average. Now that there it's an alright stat to know what the average is. However, I'd already been thinking this myself from just observing AJ's fight style. I'd had questions. I'm thinking, why is he becoming... AJ's been built on being a ferocious inside fighter. Yes, he's got a bit of a 1-2 as well, but more of a ferocious inside fighter. That's how he's been built. Well, initially, for the first 16 fights, the CompuBox man says 57% were inside shots. Now, however, it's the opposite. Now it's the opposite. Now it's 57 are jabs. So, and that's not a small difference. It's a colossal difference. That's completely different. That's a completely different fighter. And this is the question I've been asking. People have been telling me all this time, oh no, YB, no, why AJ needs to be a jab and grab fighter. Well, unfortunately, that's not the fighter he's been. And actually, I'd beg this question. I think the main reason we've seen AJ's fights become tougher, I'd put that all down to this whole strategy business. That's what I'd put it down to, honestly. I believe, and this is why people were laughing at me, or obviously Americans were laughing at me, when I said that AJ will completely munch Wilder if he uses his inside game. Because Wilder doesn't have any inside game. Same as Fury. If AJ goes in there with a high guard, that Canelo versus Kovalev kind of guard. High guard, get on top of him and open up. Wilder gets knocked out and stopped, the same as Klitschko. And Fury gets opened up and stopped. And this is something that people have never understood. But this whole being defensive, people see what happened against Ruiz and they say, oh, and it's quite an average thought process. Oh wait, yeah. So because he got beat, let's become more defensive. Let's run more. Let's run away more. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Because you run more, because you try and defend more, it doesn't necessarily work. It doesn't necessarily work out to your advantage. Okay, so I'm going to fight more defensive. This means I'll be defending more. No, there's an old saying, the best offense is defense, and that's not always the case. However, against Ruiz, like as an example, look at Mike Tyson in his career. No one starved Mike Tyson off by running backwards. The ones that beat him were the ones who stood with him, and that's the kind of a fighter Ruiz is. Same as Derek Chisora. That's a great example, actually. Look at Derek Chisora versus David Haye. David Haye didn't beat him by running backwards and tickling him to death. He beat him by standing with him and trading. He ended up coming off the better man on that night. That said, don't get me wrong, people like Fury, he beat Chisora, but it's a bit different. Because that there is, you got Fury who has no power, he can't fight any other way. It's not necessarily the best way to beat Chisora, it's a boring ass way to beat Chisora, but we're not talking, AJ is not Fury. If AJ was tall, lanky, had no power, had no inside ability, I'd say, yeah, you know what, piddle around on the back foot and run away. And even Klitschko, I'm not being funny, Klitschko didn't have great insight. He didn't have a great. Show me a time you've seen Klitschko throw a 3 or 4 punch combination. I've never seen it. So the reason when people talk about Klitschko and Manny Stewart, jab, jab, grab, that's what Klitschko was always a jab and a right hand man anyway. That's not AJ, as we've heard there. The first 16 fights, he was 57%, a very strong bias on inside shots. Bearing in mind, most fighters have a bias towards their jab initially anyway, because that's the easy shot to throw. The fact that AJ has 57% power shots is crazy. That means he's extremely orientated. Because the most easiest thing to do in boxing is throw a jab. Look at Fury, all he does is jab. Most fighters, all they do is jab, because it's a very low risk shot to throw. Look at Logan Paul versus KSI, you'll notice that Logan Paul, even Hughie Fury, a great example. Look at Hughie Fury. He's afraid to let the right hand go or he's afraid to let power shots go because that's when risk comes into things. Any shot that's not a jab is more risky. That's why you'll see fighters jab more in general because it's the lowest risk shot you can throw. So the fact that AJ was averaging only 43%. So essentially, AJ throwing 57% of his shots as power shots. That means that more than half of the time, he's prepared to take risk and get stuck in. And the way that AJ has to look at things, in my opinion, I might be wrong. Don't get me wrong. And that's one thing quickly as well. I said this on Patreon, but I want to say it here. Anything I say, I don't say it. By the way, people think that I'm coming. You think you know it all, or you think you know more than a professional fighter. I can honestly say, hand on my heart, yeah. I like what I see in AJ, and anything I say it because I genuinely believe that what I'm saying could add some benefit, could add some benefit. Now, whether it does or not is irrelevant. What I'm trying to get across is, when I say things, I say them genuinely because I'm trying to help. Now, maybe my help is, maybe I'm a novice, maybe I'm a casual, but still, that's what I feel better giving my opinion. Now, it may well be completely worthless. If that's the case, great. I'm just saying, whatever I do say, it's with the best intentions. I like to think that maybe something somewhere will resonate. If it doesn't, and that's cool as well. Anyway, let's cut back to it. As I was saying, 57% of his shots were inside shots. Now that's not by chance. And look at the results he was getting. Very explosive results, very ferocious results, opening people up. Simple. And this whole running back and jabbing business, and it's interesting because you even hear the CompuBox man say, he says, so we've heard from you before, after your first 16 fights, your trainer started talking about, let's become more, your trainer wants to reel you in. And this is what worries me about McCracken. I've been saying this, and unfortunately, it's not only my opinion, it's also what we've observed. The CompuBox man has picked up on it as well. AJ was a very ferocious, animalistic kind of fighter, and slowly but surely, his team, aka McCracken, has weared him down. Oh yes, jab, become boring. And it makes me laugh because look at Carl Froch. Carl Froch had a very, what's the word? He didn't have the kind of ability. Like, Carl Froch reminds me of this pure engine. He didn't have the kind of genetics and ability AJ has. That said, AJ, in my opinion, is more cerebral than Carl Froch, meaning that AJ actually listens to McCracken, which is actually a bad thing. If you look at Carl Froch's technique never really changed throughout his career. He was just a gritty fighter. So when McCracken would tell him to become more boring, he wouldn't listen, he'd just kind of do his own thing. And in a way, I wish AJ was like that, because unfortunately, in my opinion, you've got a ship man in McCracken steering the ship the wrong way. You've heard it from the CompuBox man here. This whole jab business. That's not the fight. He's not a Klitschko, yeah? He's not even a Lennox Lewis. He's just not. That's not... Lennox Lewis and Klitschko, they were not... They weren't. They would never stand... They weren't ferocious inside fighters. That's the point. People aren't getting here. AJ is a very unique mix. Just because he's 6'6" doesn't mean he's long and boring. It's not how he is. And it's not even about me wanting him to be exciting by any means necessary. I'm saying his skill set, based on his fundamental build, is a mix. He's almost... People are going to say I'm sucking him off, but it's the facts. Look at his genetic makeup in terms of the fast twitch and whatnot. He's in the middle between a Klitschko and a Mike Tyson. He's got the best of both worlds, in my opinion. We've seen AJ put crazy combinations together on the inside, hooks and uppercuts. Look how he beat Klitschko. Did he beat Klitschko out jabbing him? No. Did he beat him out tickling him to death? No. He beat him by getting stuck in and tearing him up like a pit bull terrier. That's my point. The Klitschko fight is a great example because it proved there. AJ's watch the first 4 rounds in the Klitschko fight. Tell me what you notice. AJ's trying to out jab and out long range Klitschko. And actually, to AJ's credit, as I pointed out myself, AJ has the best of both worlds. He's as good as Klitschko on the outside, and he's as good at Klitschko with a jab and 1-2 game. But being as good, it's hard to beat when you're as good as someone. It's 50-50, and that's what it was. Watch the first 4 rounds. It's a 50-50 fight, pretty equal, not much in it. Yeah. How did AJ differentiate himself? He differentiated himself and pulled off the first man to actually stop Klitschko in history. No one stopped the Manuel Stewart Klitschko. No one stopped that Klitschko. AJ was the first man ever to do it, the only man to do it. And how did he do that? Did he do it by out jabbing him? No, he did it by opening him up like a can of beans on the inside. And that's what I think's been forgotten. The whole champion's curse has come along where naturally, as a champion, we observe, as naturally most fighters as champions, they naturally become more defensive because they've got something to lose. They're not thinking about go out and being offensive and winning. They naturally develop a defensive mentality over time. Not only that though, you've got other elements in as much as AJ's trainer, as we heard here, trying to jab more, become more defensive. You've got idiots commenting, jab, grab. He needs to be working with Manny. He needs to be working with Jonathan Wanks. That's all this kind of business. As if that's not the fighter he is. I'm sorry, he's not. He's not long, or his best work is done on the inside. Look at how he stopped Charles Martin. He didn't stop him with a jab. He didn't bust him up with a jab. He pinged a counter right hand. And these are the things I thought. But seeing the Charles Martin fight, and we always talk about this fight with my friend, but that shot, that timing and countering. AJ, show me you just don't see them skills being really oriented. I don't know what they're doing, but these are the skills we should be seeing. More like we should be seeing that Floyd Mayweather kind of counter punching ability, timing, countering, all that kind of stuff in there with power shots. You know how you'd see, I don't know, man, but as an example, versus Wilder, I can see a situation when I think I said this with Dillian White as well, but when Wilder throws his right hand, if you can somehow slip it or roll it or even catch it and bang a left hook, like Canelo did against Kovalev, where he was catching and banging. If you can do that against Wilder, you could potentially be the first man to turn his right hand off. And we know, what do we know about not Dillian and AJ? They both got wicked left hooks, and I think AJ's is more shorter and more powerful than Dillian White's. So the reason I say that is that left hook is not a jab. I don't believe AJ needs to be jabbing more. Now let's put it back to the Ruiz fight. All of a sudden, because AJ had an awful performance, but the funny thing is about that awful performance, he did that trying to be a boxer. That awful performance was based on him running backwards, burning all of his energy going backwards, burning all of his energy trying to be twinkle toes, and he was trying to. And the reason he looked like a fish out of water, in my opinion, is because he doesn't know how to fight like that. It's not, and I feel that he's got. And even this man on CombiBox says here, and even AJ says himself, "Oh yeah, my training team are trying to tone me down and become more." Why? I just don't get it. It's like McCracken's got this fundamentalist view in his head that every fighter needs to be the same way. Well, unfortunately, it's not how it works. Like I say every time, look at Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt, based on his physiology, as in tall and lanky, he shouldn't be nowhere near 100 meters. However, his genetic makeup, very, very explosive, like AJ's. You don't need to be doing that backwards BS. He needs to be, yes, have a strong jab, but his intention should always be to get on the inside where he can use his best advantage, as with the Klitschko fight. On the outside, it was 50-50. The minute he got on the inside, that's where his best skills came ahead. Now, against Ruiz, people say, "Oh well, YB, look, he did try and trade. He did trade with Ruiz. You're talking rubbish. Look, but it was because of trading that he got caught." Now, in reality, that's not a fair statement. I'm not saying, I've never said for AJ to go in there with his hands low and stick his chin in the air and just swing. Part of that was, I'm not sure, that Ruiz performance is crazy in itself, but that there was a mix of a really bad mix of everything. When he was on the outside, he was just running. He wasn't like pumping a jab, and when he was on the inside, he was being reckless. Like, it was several times on the inside. I think he dings a right hand or something, and he's got his lead hand down. Like, that just doesn't make no sense. So basically, he has his lead hand by his waist. He dings a right hand, and he's got basically both hands nowhere near his head. So my point is, it's just very. I'm not saying that's his normal performance anyway, but for whatever reason, he was awful on the inside as well. It wasn't like when you see Canelo as an example on the inside, very high guard, and that's what you've got to be doing. There's absolutely no excuse. Even look at Roy Jones, the great Roy Jones, the great cat. He got caught a number of times trying to do all this low hand BS. It's not worth it. It don't make no sense. When you're on the inside, high guard, chin down, simple as that. There's no excuse not to doing it. Absolutely none. And that's if you watch the Ruiz fight, you will notice that wasn't happening. So, what I'm saying is, AJ, I will back AJ, me personally, maybe I'm wrong, but I back AJ on the inside, hook for hook, uppercut for uppercut. I'm taking AJ against any man. Yeah, that's simple as that. So, when you bet on that, that's why I'm confident he beats Ruiz, because, yeah, maybe 1 in 10 times, or even if you call it, maybe 3 in 10 times Ruiz will beat AJ on the inside, but 7 out of 10, it's all based on stats. I'm prepared to say AJ is twice as good as Ruiz on the inside, which would make it 66 and 33 in terms of a split. So yeah, 33 times out of 100 Ruiz will beat him, but 66 at a time. Does that mean something I'm trying to say? My point is that AJ needs to not only back himself on the inside, not when I say back yourself. Don't go in there and stick your chin in the air and just start swinging. I'm saying, you got to remember, AJ's a skilled Olympic champion, so he's not, and he's been training for, not only Olympic champion, he's been training for 7 years after that. So I'm not. People say, oh, he can't beat Ruiz. AJ's got as much training and as much schooling as Ruiz has. So why is it everyone's all of a sudden scared to go toe to toe with Ruiz? I don't get it at all. I just don't understand it. I really don't. As an example, many of us, what do you lot think about a fight between Ruiz and Chisora? I like that. I like that as a 50-50 fight. So why is it we can like that as a 50-50 fight, but we don't like AJ? Like, are you joking? I take AJ over Chisora in terms of power, speed, combinations, and etc. etc. Not he hasn't got as much tenacity as Chisora, but in terms of inside attributes, power, speed, and whatnot, I take AJ over him. So wait there, if I take AJ over Chisora, how can I not back AJ on the inside versus Ruiz? It's all a big circle there, but I know styles make fights. That's a BS cliche anyway. But my point is, for 16 fights, AJ was 57% of his shots were inside shots, and it just so happens they were his most dominant performances. Now, interestingly, the man does bring up, well, to be fair, your level of opponents have changed. But once again, I argue with that. Because your level of opponent has changed, it shouldn't change the way you fight. Does that make sense? As an example, too often in sport, same as the champion's curse, too often in sport people say, oh, this is a high pressure fight. And actually, funnily enough, we saw this in the Klitschko fight. I believe that's what happened. For the first 4 rounds against Klitschko, AJ put too much pressure on himself, and he gave Klitschko too much respect. He thought, you know what, this is my toughest fight. This man's an all-time great. I'm going to treat him like an all-time great. And that's why AJ didn't get stuck in. That's why he stayed at mid-range for 4 rounds, and he just kind of boxed. However, the minute he got stuck in, that's when he differentiated himself. Too much respect. So, for this CompuBox man points out that for the first 16 fights, it was 57%. After that, it's flipped to the opposite. Now, I say that is a result of his opponent changing, not because they're better. They haven't made him jab more. I argue, or I believe, AJ's mindset's changed. Half to do with McCracken, as in McCracken saying, "Oh, AJ, look, we must now try and defend the belts." No, you do what got you there. You be more ferocious. You bust these people up. Like as an example, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson in his prime. In fact, in his prime or not, Mike Tyson, whoever he came up against, whether it was Spinks, whether it was Berbick, Larry Holmes, whoever, in his prime, did Mike Tyson's performance, when Mike Tyson knocked someone out in the first round, knocked some bum out in the first round, did he fight differently to when he fought Larry Holmes or Spinks? No, he came out and got on with his job, because that's how he was made. That's how he's made. He didn't, the equivalent would be Mike Tyson knocking everyone out for 30 fights, then fighting Spinks, and all of a sudden just jabbing all the time, and all of a sudden trying to increase his jab percentage. Don't make no sense. That just because I understand the psychology behind it, because you put more value. Oh, this guy's a better fighter, so I'm gonna impose a lower risk strategy. I'm gonna jab more, be more defensive. No, but it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. You have to just because your opponents change and they're better, it doesn't mean you completely change your fight style. You stick to your fight style and you back yourself. You bet on yourself. You say, listen, yeah, my opponent's better, but unless you, and the only way you should change your style is if you believe they're better than you. Now, if AJ and his training team are saying, you know what, we believe Ruiz is better than us on the inside, that's why we're not going to do it. That makes sense logically. If you believe AJ versus Ruiz is 51-49 in Ruiz's favour, then yeah, of course you should jab him, because it doesn't look, from a probability point of view, it doesn't make sense. If you think that more than half of the time you're going to lose to Ruiz on the inside, then absolutely you don't make no sense. You need to go on the back foot and jab. But I don't believe that, and this is what comes down to this whole training team business. I don't know what they do believe. We're going to find out on December 7th, excitingly enough. But I'm hoping they back AJ on what he's proven. I argue the reason these fights have all got closer and it culminated in that Ruiz performance is because they've been following this weird strategy of getting at every fight that's gone on. AJ's gone away from what made him great, or what makes him not. In my opinion, he can still be great doing the jab and right hand business like he did against Parker. But you'll notice there's a reason AJ stopped Klitschko and didn't stop Parker. He stopped Klitschko because after 4 rounds, that whole nervousness, that whole pressure, that whole, oh, this man's he got over that after 4 rounds and thought, you know what, I'm sticking it on him. And you notice that he started talking to Klitschko saying, I'm going to knock you out. The minute he lost that respect for Klitschko is when he got stuck in, and that's when he differentiated himself. It was 50-50 for the first 4 rounds, and then he got over it and got stuck in. Now look at the other fight, look at the Parker fight. Why didn't he stop Parker? Because at not one point did he really commit and say, you know what, I'm going to show this man no respect. And it could be, in my opinion, it's half to do with the Champions curse, half to do with the whole making a load of money, and half to do with the training team, all influencing him to become less ferocious. But like I say, ultimately, you need to follow the Mike Tyson way of things. Stick to, because whether your opponent's God himself, you back yourself. Whoever it is, you back yourself and your own attributes. That's what you have to do. And that's what Conor McGregor did well. Well, actually, tell a lie. Here's another one. A great example, actually. Look at him against Khabib. He actually has talked about it since. McGregor said, listen, ever since when I fought Khabib the first time, when I fought Khabib, I'm annoyed because I didn't back myself. I spent too much time worrying about defending. And that was one of Conor's worst performances. McGregor got knocked down for the first time in his career, trying to be too defensive. And that's one of the things he says. I'm not trying to big up McGregor, but however great McGregor used to be, that was because he backed himself every time. Whether he was fighting a wrestler, in Mini Mendez, whoever, even Eddie Alvarez, who at the time was a great wrestler, even now is. My point is, every time McGregor backed himself, I don't care about your ground game, you get in his hands. And he went in and done it. Against Khabib, he spent too much time trying to work on defense and whatnot and didn't get his own offense off. It's the same thing, same principle. You have to back yourself in what you're good at. AJ, yeah, he's good at 1-2, but his differential, where he's best at, is on the inside. And before I go, it's been a long ass video, but I hope that maybe you man can take some value from it, or someone can. The last thing I'll say, just quickly, is that this CompuBox man points out the first 16 fights. Now, them first 16 fights actually take us up to the Charles Martin fight. So that includes the Dillian. You man who follow the channel know that my favourite performance is AJ's Dillian White performance. So the Dillian White performance is included in the 57%, meaning that this is one of AJ's best performances. Was doing what he does best on the inside, completely hunting Dillian White and backing himself. AJ went into that fight saying, I know I'm better than this man on the inside, and chased him all around the ring and beat him up, knocked him out, yeah, slumped his arm over the ring, simple as that, no doubt. Charles Martin, put him down with a stiff right hand twice, whip, whip, simple as that, short and sharp, counter punch, whip, timed him, perfect stuff, no fanning around. And then the Klitschko fight came. And even then, in the Klitschko fight, it's funny, after the Klitschko fight, Robert McCracken came out and said, oh yeah, this proves that, oh yeah, we don't want to have fights like that anymore. And they took that as an omen. They took that as, you know what, we don't want to have a tough fight like that again. Let's work how to defend more. As if being more, when you try and avoid smoke, you end up in an Andy Ruiz kind of situation. When you try and run away from it,
you're just going to get it more. That's going to turn people on. Running away from Ruiz turns him on. You don't turn people off. How AJ broke people down before was intimidation, was mauling them. Look at Dillian White as an example. He scared Dillian White in that fight. I don't care what no one says. He was all over him. Now, if AJ goes in there and starts playing around on the back foot, that can only give people confidence, as it did in the Ruiz fight. Ruiz was shocked when AJ was come out from the bell, running backwards. Simple. And I'll end it on this note, but just take the Klitschko fight. The first 4 rounds, he played around. After that, the minute he started doing what he's good at, it was all over. Not, it wasn't immediately, but he broke him down, bashed him up, all over the ring. No one's ever done that to Klitschko before. This new Klitschko. Anyway, let me know what you man think.